Hi everyone. So I'm going to do a reading for this afternoon's reflection, and then I might do a prayer later for evening reflection. But it's sad to see there's been another shooting in America at a Catholic school this time, and it's really nerve-wracking. When I worked at Branksome Hall, that's one of the things that we had to do. We had to do a drill, an emergency drill. And it was my first time experiencing that. So I asked them, why do we have to do this? They're like, no, you have to do it because in case there's a shooting or a fire or anything like that. So I said, shooting? They said, yes, there have been incidents of people coming into schools with guns. I was like, oh, okay. I guess I didn't really think about it happening at a posh school like that. But apparently that's where it happens more, in the rich schools, the rich places. So for me, coming here to Canada, it was a culture shock because in Africa, yes, we do have problems, we do have break-ins, you do have crime, but the schools were always our safe place. The schools were always the sacred place, so to speak. Nobody would dare to attack the schools or to have protests outside the schools or anything like that. So much so that during the Rhodesian Civil War, they put tankers outside the school. So we would go to school and there'd be these huge tankers in the camouflage colors that our army used to be. It was like a green and brown and gold kind of collage. They would be sitting outside our Russell School because Russell School was right as you come into the town in Kwekwe. And there were some factories behind it, but there was bush, there was the mine on the other side, the Globe and Phoenix mines. So, yeah, it was a culture shock for me. And then they walked us through what you have to do. You have to go outside, you have to line up, then they take the roll call. But it's very sad. It's very sad because I never thought I'd come here and be exposed to that kind of thing. And one of the movies that we watched at Regis College when we did our movies of Finding God in the Dark with Monty, my professor, it was on the Columbine shooting and what happened there, how these children used to play these games, computer games, and they used to do all this. It's a shooting game, I guess, whatever they were doing. And then they went and they ordered these guns. They got them in the mail, and how they went to the school and they opened fire. And it's a shocking movie. But again, it comes back to identity. And how do we find our identity in God, in family, in decisions? And, especially when those shootings and that take place and they are affluent children. They are children from affluent homes. Their parents are heads of schools and doctors and lawyers and all of that. It makes you think about, is that all that matters in life? In some ways we had a better quality of life in Africa, and we didn't have to deal with some of the things that you have to deal with here. But it is very sad, and it's a very good movie if you want to watch it and think about how identity is formed in that, and where is God in all of that, in that pain, in that heartache, in that destruction, in the taking of young lives. And, as Catholics, that sacredness of life, that people can just take lives, it's very shattering. it's very hard, especially when there's children involved for us. And then you have all this Boko Haram, and you have all these things where, they go in and they shoot, they kidnap women and children, and then they take them into these harems. And even here in Montreal, I didn't know about that shooting that happened here. So you don't know all these things when you are coming to a new country. You don't hear about them. I guess in Zimbabwe, in that way, we were fortunate because the schools were the one place where we could feel safe. So, yeah, it's sad. I will keep them in my prayers. I do the Divine Mercy sometimes when I'm at home, and I have my intentions. So that's something that you could do. If you're learning how to pray the Marians, they have the prayer at 3 p.m. every day. They do the Divine Mercy, and it's on YouTube if you want to follow it and do it with us. I'm a Marian helper also, so I help them. And yeah, it would be a good prayer to say. But for today, for this afternoon reflection, I'm just going to read a few pages from this book, this Annam Cara by John O'Donoghue. And since I'm reflecting on life and that gift of life and how life has been taken away in school shootings, I think this is also a good one for me to read. I wasn't thinking of it in that way when I selected this, but I saw that news on Shalom World. I follow them because that's where I started following Pope Francis's journeys and homilies and all of that. So because they have a nice English translation, and Vatican News also does a nice one on YouTube. So this reflection for today, it's pages 112 to 114. To be born is to be chosen. To be born is to be chosen. No one is here by accident. Each one of us was sent here for a special destiny. Often the deeper meaning of a fact emerges when it is read in a spiritual way. When you consider the moment of conception, there are endless possibilities. Yet, in most cases, only one child is conceived. This seems to suggest that a certain selectivity is already at work. This selectivity intimates a sheltering providence which dreamed you, created you, and always minds you. You were not consulted on the major questions which shape your destiny. When you were to be born, where you were to be born, to whom you would be born. Imagine the difference it would have made to your life had you been born into the house next door. Your identity was not offered for your choosing. In other words, a special destiny was prepared for you, but you were also given freedom and creativity to go beyond the given, to make a new set of relationships and to forge an ever new identity, inclusive of the old, but not limited to it. This is the secret pulse of growth, quietly at work behind the outer facade of your life. Destiny sets the outer frame of experience and life. Freedom finds and fills its inner form. For millions of years before you arrived here, the dream of your individuality was carefully prepared. You were sent to shape a destiny in which you would be able to express the special gift you bring to the world. Sometimes this gift may involve suffering and pain that can neither be accounted for nor explained. There is a unique destiny for each person. Each one of us has something to do here that can be done by no one else. If someone else could fulfill your destiny, then they would be in your place and you would not be here. It is in the depths of your life that you will discover the invisible necessity which has brought you here. When you begin to decipher this, your gift and giftedness come alive. Your heart quickens and the urgency of living rekindles your creativity. If you can awaken the sense of destiny, you come into rhythm with your life. You fall out of rhythm when you renege on your potential and talent, when you settle for the mediocre as a refuge from the core. When you lose rhythm, your life becomes wearingly deliberate or anonymously automatic. Rhythm is the secret key to balance and belonging. This will not collapse into false contentment or passivity. It is the rhythm of a dynamic equilibrium, a readiness of spirit, a poise which is not self-centered. The sense of rhythm is ancient. All life came out of the ocean. Each one of us comes out of the waters of the womb. The ebb and flow of the tides is alive in the ebb and flow of our breathing. When you are in rhythm with your nature, nothing destructive can touch you. Providence is at one with you. It minds you and brings you to your new horizons. To be spiritual is to be in rhythm. So when I chose this, I chose it not bearing in mind that school shooting, but I think it's a good reflection to have. And Father Kolarcik and Monty, they were the ones that introduced me to this method of reflecting, taking the gifts, the talents, and bringing them together in a creative way. And Monty had that book, Finding God in the Dark. It was so expensive, I never bought a copy of it, but I will. And it's basically looking at taking a movie or taking a reflection of that movie and seeing how do you find the Christ spirit in that, the journey of the Christian in that movie. So yeah, it's sad for me because I like children, and it's sad to see that there's been yet another shooting in a school. But I thought I would share that because it's a really nice way of reflecting on identity and how each one of us is chosen by God to be on this planet. If you take your life and take you out of that story, you can ask your friends, your family, take me out of your story, and how would your life have been different? I know my life would have been different without the professors, without the family, without the friends, without everything that I've had in my life. the good and the bad, my life would have been different. So when people just take lives like that, it's very hard. It's very hard to, and when there's shootings like that, even when the police shoot, when they tell somebody to stop and they don't stop and they shoot. I saw a shooting in Johannesburg when I was working at Johannesburg Child Welfare, and there was somebody running. I think he had stolen something, and the police told him to stop, and he didn't stop, and they shot him. They shot him and they killed him. And that gunshot does not sound like anything that you hear on the TV. It sounds like a bottle popping, like when you pop the bottle of the champagne, when you take that cork out, that's what it sounds like. So it's very sad when you witness something like that. And each life is a gift. Each life is unique, and God gives each of us a different path and a different destiny for every one of us. So if you were born, you were chosen. And that's the message that is in this for today. If you were born, you were chosen.